They told me not to sing it like it was a warning, not a suggestion. I remember the room clearly. Too cold, too bright, full of people who spoke softly but carried sharp opinions. Executives, advisors, voices that had learned how to sound concerned while protecting their own interests. The song sat on the table between us like something dangerous, its lyrics printed in black ink that felt heavier than paper. "Whitney, this isn't right for you," one of them said, folding his hands. "It's too personal," another added. "People aren't ready to hear you like this." What they really meant was simple. This song couldn't be controlled. I nodded while they talked. I always did. Years of training had taught me how to listen without reacting, how to absorb pressure without cracking. But inside something tightened. Not fear, recognition. The kind that makes your chest ache because the truth has already found you. I had sung hundreds of songs written by others, lived inside melodies that weren't born from my own scars. I had turned pain into beauty on command. But this one didn't feel like a performance. Felt like a confession. When I first heard the demo, alone in my car with the volume turned low, I had to pull over. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. Not because the song was hard to sing, but because it said things I had never allowed myself to say out loud. It spoke of longing without romance, of faith that faltered, of strength that cracked under expectation. It didn't beg for applause. It didn't promise triumph. It told the truth. And truth scares people when it comes from someone they've placed on a pedestal. They reminded me of my image, my legacy, my responsibility. They talked about charts, radio play, backlash. Someone even smiled and said, "We just want to protect you." I wanted to laugh. Protection had always been another word for silence. I left that meeting with the song still echoing in my head, every lyric pressing against me like it refused to be ignored. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing the melody in the quiet, softer than my doubts but stronger than my fear. I stood at the window of my hotel room, city lights flickering below, and asked myself a question I had avoided for years. What happens when the voice everyone loves starts telling the truth? I knew the risks. I knew how quickly love could turn into judgment. I knew that once a song is released, you can't take it back, and neither can the parts of yourself it reveals. But I also knew something else. If I didn't sing this song, it would haunt me. Because there comes a moment in every artist's life when you realize you're not afraid of failure anymore. You're afraid of disappearing inside the version of yourself others are comfortable with. And standing there, alone with the city watching from below, I made a decision that scared me more than any bad review ever could. I would sing it. Not to rebel. Not to prove anything. But because some songs don't belong to the industry. They belong to the truth. And once I chose it, I had no idea who I was about to disappoint, or what it would cost me to finally be heard. The first time they told me not to sing it, I smiled like I understood. That's what people don't realize about moments like that. They're rarely dramatic. No shouting. No slam doors. Just calm voices, polite concern, and a pressure so quiet you almost miss how heavy it is until it's sitting on your chest. We were in a rehearsal space in New York, Midtown, the kind with beige walls that absorb sound and ambition equally. A piano sat in the corner, its lid closed like it was holding a secret. My band was gone for the day. This meeting wasn't for musicians. It was for decisions. "Whitney, we've reviewed the material," my manager said, tapping a folder with his knuckle. "Most of it is strong, radio-friendly, safe." That word again. "And this one," another voice added, sliding a single sheet of paper forward. "This one worries us." I looked down. The title stared back at me, simple, unassuming, like it had no idea it was about to cause trouble. My stomach tightened. "What worries you?" I asked. There was a pause, the kind that pretends to be thoughtful but is really strategic. "It sounds angry," someone finally said. "Not angry," another corrected. "Exposed. And that's not how people see you." I leaned back in my chair and folded my arms, not defensively, protectively. "How do people see me?" They exchanged looks. That was answer enough. As someone who saves. Someone who uplifts. Someone who sings about love so big it makes people forget their own mess. Someone who doesn't ask uncomfortable questions. Not someone who admits doubt. Not someone who confesses exhaustion. Not someone who sings a line that says, "I gave until there was nothing left, and still they asked for more." That lyric, the executive said carefully. It feels personal. It is, I said. That's the problem. I felt something shift inside me then. Not anger, not yet, but clarity. The kind that arrives quietly and changes everything. They didn't want to protect me from pain. They wanted to protect the version of me that made sense to them. I stood up and walked to the piano without asking permission. Lifted the lid. Sat down. My fingers found the keys like they'd been waiting all along. "I just want to hear how it feels in the room," I said. Before anyone could stop me, I played. I sang softly at first, almost to myself. No big notes. No power. Just honesty. The lyrics fell into the space between us, and the room changed. I could feel it, the discomfort, the shifting in chairs, the way people stopped making eye contact. Because once the song was alive, it couldn't be dismissed as a concept. It was a mirror. When I finished, silence took over. The kind that isn't applause and isn't rejection, just uncertainty. "That's exactly why we're concerned," my manager said gently. "Whitney, this song tells people you're struggling." I laughed then. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. "I am struggling," I said. "Why is that so dangerous?" "Because struggle breaks illusions." They told me to think about it, to sleep on it, to remember what I'd worked so hard to build. They said, "Just don't sing it, not yet." Not yet is the most patient way to say never. That night, alone in my apartment, I played the demo again. Louder this time. I sang along, full voice, no holding back. My throat burned. My eyes filled. I let it happen. And something scared me. I didn't feel weak singing it. Felt free. That's when I understood what they were really afraid of. If I sang this song, people wouldn't just hear my voice. They'd hear me. And once I accepted that, I knew the fight wasn't about a song anymore. It was about who got to decide when my truth was allowed to exist. I turned off the music and sat in the dark, heart racing, knowing the next step would cost me something. Relationships, support, safety. But I also knew this. The stage was coming. The microphones would be live. And the decision I made next would change everything. By the next morning, the song had already become a problem. I knew that because my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I let it buzz while I made coffee, watching steam rise like it was trying to escape the room. Messages stacked up. My manager, the label, an unfamiliar number I knew better than to answer. Everyone suddenly had thoughts, opinions, urgency. I didn't return any of them right away. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table, the demo playing softly from a cassette recorder, and tried to listen like I wasn't me. Like I was just a woman hearing another woman tell the truth. The lyrics still landed hard. They didn't feel reckless. They felt precise, honest, necessary. That scared me more than anything. When I finally arrived at the studio later that afternoon, the atmosphere had shifted. The building looked the same. Glass doors, familiar hallways, the faint smell of coffee and electronics, but the energy was wrong. Tighter. Guarded. Conversations stopped when I walked past. Smiles didn't quite reach eyes. In Studio B, my producer, Marcus, waited by the soundboard. He was one of the few people who had never tried to shape me into something smaller. He believed in sound, not image. Truth, not strategy. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "I think so," I said. "You?" He exhaled through his nose. "They're nervous. That makes two of us." We didn't talk about the song at first. We ran through other tracks. Safe ones. Polished ones. Songs everyone agreed on. I hit the notes. I delivered. I watched the engineers nod with relief. But something was missing. Every time we stopped, my eyes drifted to the lyric sheet tucked into my bag. The forbidden one. The room felt like it was avoiding it, like pretending something doesn't exist could make it disappear. During a break, Marcus leaned closer. "They asked me not to let you record it," he said quietly. I didn't look at him. Did you agree? No, he said. I said I don't tell Whitney Houston what not to feel. That made my chest tighten. Gratitude and fear tangled together. Still, trust felt fragile. Because I'd learned something about this world. Support often came with conditions you didn't see until it was too late. Later that evening there was a meeting. Not scheduled. Not announced. Just suddenly happening. They gathered in the conference room. Suits, folders, calm faces. I sat at the end of the table, my hands folded in my lap. My heart beat louder than anything anyone said. One of the executives cleared his throat. Whitney, we've had some concerns raised. By who? Asked. He smiled politely. By people who care about you. There it was again. They talked about brand consistency. About timing. About how the media loved a story of strength, not uncertainty. Someone mentioned how vulnerable lyrics could be misinterpreted. Another warned that it could invite scrutiny into my personal life. That door, he said, doesn't close once it's opened. I looked around the table. You think it's not already open? No one answered. Then came the revelation. Quiet, almost accidental. We've already adjusted the track list, my manager said. Just in case. Adjusted. As in removed. They had decided without me. I felt something inside me go cold. So this isn't a conversation, I said slowly. It's a courtesy. We're trying to save you from regret, someone replied. No, I said. You're trying to save yourselves from discomfort. The room stiffened. I stood up, chair scraping against the floor. This is my voice. My life. You don't get to protect me from myself. They didn't argue. They didn't have to. Power doesn't raise its voice. I walked out before they could stop me, my legs shaking but my spine straight. In the hallway, Marcus caught up to me. They're pushing hard, he said. I know. He hesitated. You sure you're ready for this? I thought about the lyrics. About the mirror they held up. About how tired I was of pretending strength meant silence. No, I said honestly. But I'm more afraid of not doing it. As I reached the elevator, my phone buzzed again. A message from someone I trusted. Someone close. Someone who knew things. It read, be careful. Not everyone fighting you is honest about why. The doors slid shut. And for the first time I realized the real danger wasn't the song. It was discovering who was willing to let me fall, as long as I stayed quiet. The warning stayed with me longer than I wanted to admit. Be careful. Not everyone fighting you is honest about why. I replayed it in my head while the elevator descended, the hum of the cables sounding like a countdown. By the time the doors opened, my reflection in the mirrored wall looked steadier than I felt. Calm face. Controlled breath. The same armor I'd worn for years. But armor gets heavy when you never take it off. That night I didn't go home. I drove instead. No destination. Just movement. The city blurred past my windows. Neon signs, streetlights, strangers living lives that didn't depend on my next decision. The song played again, louder now, filling the car like it refused to be ignored. I sang with it. Not perfectly. Not carefully. I cracked on a line I'd never cracked on before. And instead of correcting myself, I let it happen. My voice sounded raw. Unprotected. Real. I pulled over and rested my forehead against the steering wheel, breathing through a tightness in my chest that felt dangerously close to tears. That was when it hit me. The song wasn't just exposing my pain. It was exposing theirs. People around me had built careers, identities, and safety nets around the version of Whitney who never pushed back. The Whitney who smiled, delivered, endured. If I sang this song, it wouldn't just change how the audience saw me. It would change how they had to see themselves. The next day, rehearsals resumed for an upcoming live performance, a televised charity concert, millions watching. The set list had already been approved. Final. Or so they thought. Backstage, the air buzzed with urgency. Headsets crackled. Assistants moved fast, avoiding eye contact. I could feel eyes on me, measuring my mood, my obedience. Marcus found me near the wings. They don't know you're thinking about it, he said quietly. About singing it? Yes. He nodded. If you do this, there's no undoing it. I know. He studied my face. You okay? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to say I was strong, prepared, unshaken. But the truth pressed against my ribs. I'm scared, I said. He didn't flinch. Good. Means it matters. Those words grounded me more than any reassurance ever had. In my dressing room I stared at myself again. The same mirror, different night. I practiced the opening line under my breath. Not for pitch, but for courage. My hands trembled, and I didn't hide it. A knock came at the door. My manager stepped inside, closing it carefully behind him. His smile was tight. Whitney, he said, we need to be on the same page tonight. I met his eyes. Then start being honest. He sighed. This isn't the time. It never is, I replied. You'll hurt people, he said. Or I'll tell the truth, I said. Why are those always treated like the same thing? Silence stretched between us. Please, he said finally, softer now. Not tonight. That was when I understood. He wasn't worried about backlash. He was worried I wouldn't need him the same way anymore. After he left, my heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat. I sat down, closed my eyes, and imagined the stage. The lights, the crowd, the silence before the first note. I imagined singing the song, not as rebellion but as release. And then another thought followed, colder than the rest. What if someone tried to stop me? Set lists can change. Microphones can malfunction. Cues can be skipped. Accidents happen easily when enough people want them to. As showtime approached, tension wrapped tighter around the building. I could feel it in the way people spoke, in the way glances lingered too long. Something was coming. I stepped toward the stage entrance, heart racing, knowing I was about to test how much control I actually had over my own voice. The announcer's voice echoed through the arena. And now, Whitney Houston. Applause thundered. I took one step forward, and felt a hand catch my wrist from behind. Not rough, not gentle, intentional. I turned, breath caught in my chest, and realized the fight I thought would be public had just become dangerously private. The grip on my wrist tightened just enough to make its message clear. Whitney, a voice said quietly behind me. This isn't the moment. Turn slowly. It was the stage director, someone I'd worked with for years, someone who knew my rhythms, my cues, my trust. His face looked calm, but his eyes were not. They were calculating, like he was balancing two impossible orders. Let go, I said. He didn't. We have a running order, he whispered. You go on in 30 seconds. You sing what's on the list. What if I don't? Asked. A muscle in his jaw twitched. Then things get complicated. That word landed hard. I pulled my hand free and stepped closer, lowering my voice. You don't get to complicate my truth. Before he could respond, Marcus appeared, placing himself subtly between us. She's ready, he said firmly. Not loud. Not aggressive. Unmovable. The director hesitated, then stepped back. 30 seconds, he repeated, retreating into the chaos of headsets and flashing signals. My heart was racing now, not from fear of the audience, but from the realization that this was bigger than a creative disagreement. This was control. Quiet, procedural, disguised as professionalism. I walked toward the edge of the stage, the roar of the crowd washing over me like heat. The lights were blinding. I could barely see faces, only movement and expectation. They didn't know what was happening behind the curtain. They never did. The band started the intro to the scheduled song. Not the one. I froze for half a second. Just long enough for doubt to try to claw its way in. Is this worth it? The thought passed as quickly as it came. I stepped to the microphone and raised my hand. The band faltered. Confused glances. The conductor looked at me, eyes wide. I leaned in and spoke, not to the crowd but to the room. Follow me. Then I sang the opening line of the forbidden song. No build-up. No announcement. Just truth, naked and unprotected, spilling into the arena. A ripple moved through the crowd. Confusion first, then silence. The kind of silence that listens. The band caught up instinctively. Musicians recognizing honesty when they hear it. Backstage, I knew chaos was erupting. I could feel it even without looking. Producers scrambling, managers panicking, fingers hovering over switches and controls. I sang anyway. My voice didn't soar. Stood. Every lyric landed heavier than rehearsal. Every word felt like it was pulling something loose inside me. I wasn't performing anymore. I was testifying. Then something went wrong. The sound dipped just for a second. Enough to be noticed. A flicker in the monitors. The lights shifted, subtly but unmistakably, throwing me into partial shadow. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a technical glitch. This was a message. I kept singing, pushing through, projecting harder. The crowd murmured, uneasy now. I could see movement at the edge of the stage. People arguing, hands waving, someone pointing at me like I was a problem to be solved. Another dip. The microphone crackled. I took a breath and sang without it. Unamplified. My voice cutting through the space on its own strength. The audience leaned forward as one. That's when I saw him, my manager, standing just off stage, face pale, phone pressed to his ear. He wasn't watching me. He was watching the control booth. I finished the verse and stepped back, chest heaving. The lights snapped fully back on. The sound returned, louder than before, almost aggressive. Applause erupted. Not polite, not expected, but explosive. The kind that comes when people feel like they've witnessed something they weren't supposed to. Smiled then. Not out of relief. Out of defiance. But as the noise swelled, I noticed something chilling. Security was moving. Not toward the crowd. Toward me. And in that moment, standing in the spotlight, I realized the danger hadn't passed. It had just changed shape. Because I hadn't just broken a rule. I had exposed how far some people were willing to go to keep me quiet, and I was still standing exactly where they could reach me. They escorted me off stage with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. The applause was still crashing behind us, a living thing refusing to be silenced, but backstage the air felt thin, electric, dangerous. Someone pressed a towel into my hands. Someone else murmured, "Incredible," like a reflex. I didn't stop walking. I needed space before the adrenaline turned into something darker. A door opened. Closed. The room was small and windowless, meant for quick costume changes, not confrontations. The hum of the building seeped through the walls like a reminder that nothing here was truly private. I leaned against the table, breathing hard, my heart still pounding from singing without a net. The door opened again. My manager stepped in first. Then the executive I recognized from the meetings. Then another face I didn't expect. Legal counsel, crisp suit, expression unreadable. 3 against 1, arranged like they'd rehearsed it. "You went rogue," my manager said, not angry. Disappointed. That hurt more. "I sang," I replied. "That's my job." "That song wasn't cleared," the executive said. "You put us at risk." "You put me at risk," I shot back. "You tried to cut my sound." A flicker crossed his face. "Gone in a second. Confirmation enough." "That was a technical issue," he said smoothly. I laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Don't insult me." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Whitney, let's take a breath. This doesn't have to escalate." I straightened. "It already has." They talked about contracts. About clauses and consequences. About how spontaneity could be framed as breach. About how public sympathy doesn't always protect you the way you think it will. Then came the revelation, the real one. "We've been fielding concerns," the executive said carefully. "From sponsors. From partners. They don't want unpredictability associated with your brand." "My brand," I repeated. "Is that what I am now?" He didn't answer. My manager finally met my eyes. "They're prepared to pause some things," he said. "Tours. Appearances. Until this settles." Was another soft word. Another quiet threat. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about tonight. Never was. This was about leverage. About reminding me how fragile my freedom actually was. They couldn't stop me from singing, not really. But they could make everything after more difficult. More lonely. Who told you to pull the sound? Asked. No one spoke. I looked from face to face, recognizing something I hadn't allowed myself to before. Fear. Not of me, of losing control of me. I trusted you, I said quietly. My manager's shoulders sagged. I was trying to protect what we built. At what cost? Asked. He didn't answer that either. A knock interrupted us. An assistant peeked in, eyes wide. They want you back out there, she said. The crowd won't stop. The executive frowned. No. Smiled. I'm going, I said. You can't, the lawyer warned. I already did, I replied, moving past them. In the hallway, Marcus caught my arm. They're panicking, he whispered. But the crowd's with you. I know, I said. That's what scares them. As I walked back toward the stage, a new message buzzed on my phone. From an unknown number. You don't know what you just stepped into. Stop. For the first time since the opening note, uncertainty crept in. Not about the song, about the fallout I hadn't seen yet. The alliances shifting quietly. The doors that would close without announcement. The lights ahead flared brighter. I took a breath and stepped forward, knowing I was about to learn the real price of being heard, and that whatever waited on the other side of this moment would change everything I thought I understood about loyalty, power, and my own voice. When I stepped back onto the stage, the noise hit me like a wave. It wasn't applause anymore. It was something deeper, recognition. The kind that makes people stand without realizing they've stood. Faces were wet with tears. Hands were pressed to chests. They weren't cheering for perfection. They were responding to truth. I raised my hand, and the room slowly quieted. For the first time that night, I spoke as myself, not as a performer filling space between songs. I didn't plan to sing that, I said, my voice steady but bare. But sometimes the song chooses you. A murmur moved through the crowd, soft and understanding. I finished the performance. Not with fireworks, not with bravado, but with presence. When the final note faded, there was a second of silence before the arena erupted again, louder than before. This time, I let it wash over me without trying to earn it. Backstage afterward, everything felt different. People avoided my eyes. Others hugged me too tightly, like they were afraid I might disappear. The executive team was gone. My manager didn't say much. He didn't have to. The distance between us said enough. Later that night, alone in my hotel room, I finally let myself sit still. No rehearsing. No planning. Just breathing. The city hummed outside the window, indifferent and alive. I replayed the night in my mind. The grip on my wrist, the flicker of the lights, the moment my voice carried the room without permission. I understood something then that had taken me years to learn. Courage doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like standing still while everything around you tries to move you out of the way. The fallout came quickly. Calls slowed. Meetings were postponed. Conversations became vague. I wasn't punished outright. That would have caused too much noise, but I was redirected. Offered safer options. Encouraged to refocus. Reminded gently of what cooperation looked like. And yet something unexpected happened too. Letters arrived. Not from executives, from people. A woman who said she finally felt less alone. A man who said he'd never heard vulnerability sound like strength before. A young singer who wrote, "You gave me permission." I read every one. They mattered more than chart positions ever had. I met Marcus for coffee weeks later. He looked tired but peaceful. "No regrets?" he asked. I thought about it honestly. "Fear," I said. "Consequences. Loss." He smiled. "That's not what I asked." I shook my head. No regrets. Because here's the truth I finally accepted. My voice was never meant to be a cage. It was meant to be a doorway. And doors make people uncomfortable when they open into rooms they've avoided. I didn't lose everything, but I lost the illusion that safety comes from silence. That night taught me something fame never had. That being loved for who people want you to be is a fragile kind of love. It shatters the moment you stop performing. But being heard, truly heard, even once, even imperfectly, that stays with you. I still sang after that. Course I did. I still gave people beauty. I still lifted rooms. But I carried something new with me. A line I would never cross again. I would not betray my own truth to keep someone else comfortable. Because the song they told me not to sing, it didn't end my career. Saved my voice. And once a woman learns that her honesty can survive the fallout, she becomes impossible to silence again.